Okay, folks, we're going to get started. We had about, I think, excuse me, 84, 85 on the roster, and typically for the deer we're around 200, but that definitely doesn't represent how many show up for the live event, as many end up getting the recording and or life gets in the way sometimes. So welcome to Squirrel Hunting 101. I hope you enjoy it, and we'll get moving. So Eric Gleason, Master Officer, is going to be here tonight. He usually assists with the regs-related Q&A and sometimes hunting. He got called out, so he'll probably join us later. And obviously me, Deep James, your Hunter Engagement Coordinator. I serve as MC, obviously hunting, and the Q&A narrator. Webinar Logistics Overview. It is 1 hour long, recorded and distributed less than or equal to 2 weeks, but it may be 2 weeks or longer. In short, it is recorded into the cloud, and staff other than myself pull it out. And obviously with their busy schedule, you may not get it for a little bit, but you'll get it as soon as I get it. The question and answer link is 30 minutes long, questions in writing, topic specific, and addressed at the Q&A. Yeah, and I already had that in the top double. Well, I guess I'll have to clean that up next time. Chat hand raising is not monitored. Please allow us to cover material before writing questions. A lot of the times we do cover things and the questions are pretty much nil after that. So kind of wait towards the end because I think we'll get most everything. Please do complete our post-webinar survey. That will come with the recording, so you'll get it as soon as possible, and no reason to send you 2 emails, so I'll send them together. Whether it be the Regs Digest there or ncwildlife.gov, and I finally got to change it. In the earlier ones, I still had .org. It is analogous to the old Prego spaghetti sauce slogan. It's in there. So many of the questions that people ask can quickly be found in our Regulations Digest and or online. And that digest changes slightly from year to year, but it's mostly about dates or any new things. Make sure you get a copy or use the flipping document online. I like it myself. You can take screenshots. It works out really well. So thanks again for joining us tonight. So the future of Learn to Hunt is going to continue statewide. The future of DEET is ending. I plan on retiring January 1. I kind of changed it from a little bit earlier due to a number of reasons. I will be finishing out the year, but topics will include those as listed and obviously depending on staffing and volunteer support. So make sure you do keep out an eye on Go Outdoors. The new year may be a little bit slow. I usually start off with some mini workshops in February, and then we do the turkey workshops in March. So hopefully we'll be able to get established. We have a really good team that will be picking up probably some of the slack until my successor comes along. All I can say is it's been a great ride. And yeah, I can't say enough. Yeah, sometimes get emotional about it, but I'll try to control myself tonight. As in any species hunting, there is always a biology segment. It is always a prerequisite to hunting in my mind. And as Ray I, legendary turkey hunter from Missouri, once said, the turkeys will teach you how to hunt them, as will the deer and the squirrel. So understanding that species should always be a prerequisite. So in North Carolina, we have 5 types of squirrels: the common gray, the fox, and the red squirrel, or pine squirrel as it's referred to. And also 2 species of flying squirrels, but they are not hunted, so they are not game animals. So we're going to start out with the gray. There is several color phases. You can see 2 of them here. You have obviously the gray, you have a black phase and a white phase. And just a little share from the Allegheny State Park in New York, which is actually Pennsylvania's Allegheny National Forest. The top of it, on a turkey hunt there one year, all gray squirrels were predominantly black. It was awesome. I'll never forget it. You were hard pressed to find a gray squirrel. So you can see average length 15 to 20 inches. You can see the ounce size there. Primary food is acorns, mast, seeds, fruits, mushroom, tree buds, blooms, insects, bird eggs, and even young birds. And I even saw a squirrel. And of course, the gray is more omnivorous, whereas the other ones are eating bird eggs. He's eating the young. I've seen a squirrel one time go in a garbage can, come out of the hole, and he had a chicken leg in his mouth. So they're opportunists, and they'll take whatever they can get. 2 litters annually, produce 1 to 8 young. You can see when the mating and the young are born. 25% survival the first year and 50% thereafter, which is typically that way for young mammals. Some can survive to 7 to 8 years old. The mortality is primarily, as you would think, humans, hunting, and vehicle strikes, but also birds of prey, bobcats, coyotes, black rat snakes, and raccoons. So all things feed on either the squirrels or the young or even the eggs. And as you can see, the gray squirrel's range in the US is primarily eastern, but it also goes up into Canada. The fox, larger squirrel, definitely. You can see the lengths are bigger, as is the weights. Same food as grays, but they're also into the pine seeds, insects, and occasionally bird eggs. So pretty much the same diet. Also 2 litters, 2 to 4 young are born, and you can see the time of year. The average 3 to 4 years old, and pretty close to grays, and up to 20 in captivity. The mortality is very limited for foxes, and primarily because they are solitary and low density of population. I actually saw a black-phased one, and if you look in North Carolina, up in that northwestern range, I saw one up in the mountains. It looked like a small groundhog in a tree. It was the coolest thing. And of course, I was turkey hunting at the time. So you can see in North Carolina, mostly in the east and into the Piedmont, in the southern Piedmont, but up in the mountains. And in the US, still primarily eastern, but also getting out into the Midwestern states. The red is the cutest of all of them, and definitely the smallest, much smaller in size and weight. Also the pine seeds and acorns, buds, and berries, fruit, insects, vertebrates, bird eggs, like the others. 3 to 5 are born, and they're typically March or April. 2 to 4 young, and they are less precocial than grays, meaning require a little bit more care, whereas the grays and the foxes kind of move about quickly. They're a little bit slower as growing. Average 3 to 5 years, up to 10, and you can see the mortality of raccoons, fox, bobcats, coyotes, weasels, minks, fishers, hawks, lots of stuff, and primarily within that northern range, as you can see on the map. One thing about them that's very unique, besides being very small, very territorial and aggressive. And I'm used to hearing them from my home state of Pennsylvania. They were very common. They have this long rattling buzz sound toward intruders that is very unique and very kind of different to grays and or foxes. And of course, foxes are somewhat quieter. But yeah, once you hear it, you're going to see, what's that buzzing? So you can see where they are in North Carolina. There's a little bit in the Piedmont, but mostly out in that forested coniferous type mountain range, and not in the coast. So it's much more a colder climate squirrel. And of course, you can see how they end up much more into Canada and even as far as Alaska in North America. So it's pretty cool, and they're very unique. The flying squirrels that are non-game and not hunted, the northern flying squirrel, you can see their range mostly in the north. And on the map, you can see just this edge of North Carolina in the mountains where they inhabit, whereas the southern flying squirrel, whole eastern US and all over North Carolina. And if you've ever experienced them, I've been in a tree stand wee hours in the morning, of course, before it gets light, waiting for light, and I hear this slap against a tree, just kind of a gentle, muffled slap. Then I'd look up with my flashlight or headlamp, and it was a flying squirrel. So it was the neatest thing. They don't fly. They're not a bird. They glide, but they're cool. But remember, not hunted. They are the wealthiest of animals. They have both a winter and summer home. Woodpecker cavities are their favorite in the winter for colder, and of course, those leafy nests in the spring and through the summer. Common things with them, they are crepuscular and omnivorous. Crepuscular meaning move about primarily dawn and dusk, although they will move midday. They eat nearly everything. They are definitely acrobats if you've seen them, and they are double jointed. That's why they easily climb up and down trees, where it would be very difficult for humans to do that. We have much more power going up than we do down. Nest builders, tree cavity dwellers, you already saw that. They are influenced by the weather, very active on drizzly days. They use that little tail, as you can see the gray, they're moving it up towards his head, but I've often seen him sitting in a drizzle and it goes right up over his little head like an umbrella. Cold temperatures, stormy days, they'll typically stay in the cavities. They stand down, kind of not unlike humans. They are one of few species that bury and cache food, so they do prepare for the winter. So thinking in terms of we have to work to get money, they work to get their food, just like all animals do. It's just different kind of work. All are territorial and they will let you know typically, except for some that sneak away sometimes, but especially the reds. And they don't even like other species of squirrels. And even though they're small, they're very feisty and have known to get in fights with larger squirrels and actually run them off. The foxes are definitely reclusive, not very vocal, and yeah, tough to spot. And of course, there's less of them, even though they're bigger. Squirrels are very vocal. They use that zigzag escape strategy, not unlike rabbits will in a field, only they're in trees, and they do it on the ground as well, obviously to get away from predators. And as I like to say, they're a nervous wreck. One of the reasons I hunt in a tree stand is because I move a lot and I would never be a good hunter on the ground. Well, squirrels are the kind of same way. Rarely do they sit still very long, and they're always looking out, obviously, because they're a prey species for predators. They are very vocal, and just an example of some calls, and of course I'm not going to make any, but the bark, obviously a territorial and warning to invaders, including us. Chatter, alarm, threaten, can be fast or slow. The whine, that's that buzzing sound, and more pronounced definitely in the red, in combination with a bark. Whistle, squeal, injury, warning other squirrels, barks and chatters, and there's even a whistle, a mating whistle that I'll mention up too. So it's just varying degrees of cadence and loudness. And there's the friction call, which is actually cutting, where they grind and chew their nuts and hard mask, and especially hickory. If they're close by, you can hear this like, so you can definitely hear them, and it can serve as a call. Most of what I learned about squirrels was squirrel hunting when I was younger. And one of the sad things is that as we get older, we tend to jump into big game more, and then squirrel takes the back seat. Well, I hope to change that a little bit later, because of some of the most exciting times growing up was squirrel hunting. It was like deer to us until we started deer hunting and turkey hunting. But there's a couple of VHS tapes. They're still out there, and even DVDs. And now with the YouTubes, it's absolutely overwhelming. But these, of course, were of my era. And they were talking about squirrel calling. So, of course, I had to have them. And yeah, pretty good. Only 2 squirrel-related issues, diseases, if you would. And that's that bot fly. And if you can see on the squirrel's body, they're often referred to as wolves or warbles. The bot fly goes in there, makes itself a home on a squirrel, and then eventually comes out. Then you have the pox or the fibromas that happen on a squirrel too, and they happen on deer and humans and other species, just other species forms. Neither 2 of those issues hurt the meat. And in fact, the only time I've ever seen squirrels that had those, again, wolves or warblers or bot fly is truly what it is, was like maybe in the summertime or early in the fall, I glimpsed one, but I've never killed a squirrel that had it, because typically once the first frost hits or before the first frost hits, they're gone. So don't worry about them. As you can see here, and I'm not going to read it, there are a lot of different food. It's mostly mast, but as you can see, it's also mushrooms and berries and buds and flowers. And with the gray and all of them, they will eat meat-related things, whether it be birds or birds' eggs or invertebrates or insects or worms, whatever is available. One of the things that's great to do, obviously, prior to the season, and especially for squirrel, is to seek out hardwood forest in Google Map. And you're going to see a slide coming up, because if you don't actually visit a place, it's hard to tell what's on the ground. And back in the day, as I'll mention relative to a very brief public land overview, is nowadays you can go on the World Wide Web and see from above via satellites. So finding that stuff. Scout for these trees. Scout the canopy with binoculars. That's the easy way to find them. Search the ground for old sign, including cuttings. They don't eat the shells. They basically chew away the shell. And then come back when the season's in and the nuts are falling. I mostly say when the nuts are falling for deer, but of course, yeah, for squirrels, but the squirrels can go up and get them. The deer have to wait until they fall down. Pines are not preferred squirrel habitat. Yes, squirrels do move through there, and obviously the coniferous varieties that eat seeds, like the foxes and the pine squirrel, the red squirrel, are going to inhabit that type of land, but they primarily prefer hardwoods. So I will seek out hardwoods whenever opportunity. So that is preferred squirrel habitat, and especially if there's a lot of mass there, definitely a good place to get around. But so too do they like corn, agriculture, and other type of things like that. And if you see corn cobs drug into the woods, 25 to 50 yards, that's likely a squirrel, because deer don't do that. Deer eat them where they found them. And that's also preferred squirrel habitat. And growing up in Ridge and Valley, that was mostly like the places where I've hunted. And of course, it's common, our foothills and mountains. But anywhere where there's bottomland hardwoods, you're going to have squirrels. It is definitely a ubiquitous species. So here's an example of looking in Google Map, and which I do primarily if I'm checking out areas, especially that have a lot of pines on it. And this is definitely on an eastern game lands. Well, it'd be very easy to drive along that dirt road and say, well, there's no hardwoods here. I don't want to hunt this type of land. But when you're looking overhead in this satellite image, you can see all this vein of hardwoods that actually is a creek bottom in there. I mean, that's not only good for squirrels, that's good for deer. So if there's mast in there, even though the squirrels ain't in here really getting any food, primarily, I mean, yeah, pine cones if it's a red squirrel, but that's not a preferred gray squirrel food. You'll find them in here. So as I say, and you'll see it again, let your fingers do the walking first. So I don't know if I threw this in last year, but I did this year because I moved pretty quick on these and I talk relatively fast with trying to not talk too fast. So out of most new to hunting folks I meet, it's where to hunt. And if you have your own private property, you don't even need it, but it's going to be quick. And our goal as a state agency is to connect people to resources. When I first started out traveling, and I talk about my days of your trip to Alabama, that's what I used, a road atlas and a Pennsylvania gazetteer. There was no such thing as the WWW. And you actually had to look at road signs. So you couldn't be distracted because you were looking for road signs. And I plotted every sign all the way to Alabama. It filled like a whole sheet. Well, you don't have to do that anymore. So obviously, if you go to our website, you go to hunting, you get two choices right off the bat. You get the interactive game lands map, and there it says with dove fields. They always promote that up front. And those downloadable geo-referenced PDFs that can go in Avenza. So between looking at those two things and downloading those PDFs, it makes traveling so much easier, and you can spend far less money on gas and travel before your boots even hit the ground. One of the unique things there, and if you're looking at the map, all those diamonds are game lands, over 2 million acres in the game lands program. And where that big arrow is, that's pointing to one of my other favorite things. They're called decimal degrees. Well, decimal degrees, not degrees is, but far better than any address because they take you exactly. And so for just a walk on the map, and there's an example of Jordan, every time you put your cursor anywhere near that map, and we'll even move to the next slide. That's an example of Jordan with all the parking areas and the camping areas. Wherever you move that cursor, those numbers will move. Boom. Even if you don't have Avenza with the downloadable geo-reference PDFs, you can throw that in your Google navigation app and away you go. And most of you probably already know this because it's older people like me. I'll be turning 65 this month, Medicare eligible. You probably already know about it, but you'd be surprised how many people still don't. So with those downloadable maps, yeah, it goes on your phone with Avenza, as it's mentioned there. And of course, I'll show you another icon on it. But that is a great app that I use myself. And I like the downloadable PDFs. And we're one of very few states, I think, that has that. So it's pretty cool. So there's an example of Buffalo Cove, one of the first game lands I went to, killed a turkey there in 2008. And again, you can see the parking areas, the camping areas, and all the green is the game lands. There's a legend. And in Avenza, again, you're going to see the app coming up. You put that in there and it makes it also easier to stay on the border. Because as I say there, boundary marker disclaimer. And typically you will see on game lands at minimal 2 orange bands. They look red here, but that's the picture. Cloudy day maybe did it, I don't know. And sometimes a sign, but many of those can get knocked down. The tree falls down before you know it. Well, I don't know if I'm on private property or if I'm on game lands. Well, if you have this map or even another app that you're going to see shortly called On X, you can stay on the border, and believe me, I've seen it many times where there weren't any boundary marker trees, and our staff try to keep updates on them, but sometimes they get away. And yeah, you need to check that out. So that's Avenza. They even have their own store like that's up here that has our maps, and they're free, just like they're free to you here from the wildlife. So you would basically pull up that downloadable georeference PDF in your phone, and then it'll say open with what? Well, you open it with Avenza, and boom, you have a GPS. Then obviously one of the most popular apps probably ever, most of the young folks, or at least younger than James, are using it, and I use it myself, but I also still use a handheld GPS. So I'm still old school. Handheld GPS is by far pretty much obsolete. They're still used, but they've been taken over by these phones. So very powerful apps. So a quick review: Fingers First versus interactive map georeference PDF. Study the area further, looking for habitat via Google Map Earth. Download those game lands PDF per area of interest, showing parking areas, camping areas. And I do use the camping areas myself. Some aren't crowded. Some have a little bit more people, but you can check that out. Then download Avenza or On X. You got a GPS mobile device. Then you put your boots on the ground. See, I used to spend tons of gas and miles on the vehicle because I like to I like to wander aimlessly. I still like to do it, but do your homework first. So bottom line, folks, and you can read it. I'm not even going to read it. This is how people, and I don't like to use the term successful because success is far more than taking game, but this right here is what it's all about. The more you put into it, like many things in life, the more you're going to get out of it. And I still go to the supermarket, by the way, but it's not for me. Laws and regs keep it safe, legal, and ethical. One of the things about squirrel hunting regs is they're pretty straightforward, where we have different deer zones and different seasons depending on implement. Pretty wide open for squirrels. And as I say, let your fingers do the walking. That includes the regs digest. But we're going to throw it at you tonight. So there you go. Red and gray, October 13th to 28th. There's a gray statewide private lands only, kind of a spring summer season. Spring, May 11th to 25th. Fox squirrels 13th, October 13th to January 31st, a little shorter. For grays and reds, daily limit is 8, no possession limit, no season limit. Fox squirrel daily limit 1, possession 2, and season 10. So that means at any time you can have 2, but they need to be used up. And for the whole season, then you can get 10 total. No fully auto firearms. That's also with deer. No shotguns larger than 10. Unlawful to shoot into a squirrel's nest. Well, remember, no shooting into that summer home of the squirrel. Unlawful to hunt with or have in possession any shot shell containing lead or toxic shot while hunting on posted waterfowl impoundments on any game lands, except shotgun shells containing lead buckshot may be used while deer hunting. And as an example, we do have waterfowl impoundments. I've seen the posted signs, since it is a federal law to use non-toxic, whether it be steel, bismuth, or tungsten, no lead in those impoundments. So make sure that you're using the proper squirrel hunting shotgun shells if you're hunting in a waterfowl impoundment. And no, that doesn't count your 22 rifle. Hunter arms required when using firearms, cap or outer garment. You're going to see that again. It must be visible from all sides. So squirrel hunting, what to look for when scouting, hunting strategies, hunting calls, hunting equipment, brief processing overview. And this isn't a video, but it's a nice slide that shows exactly how I've cleaned my squirrels. And yes, it's easier than a deer, but a deer is not hard. So things to look for when you're out there, obviously, since they dig and run through the leaves, rustling and digging. And believe me, a deer hunter's like both amusement and the bane is having squirrels act like deer, especially if there's two of them together. And you're like, is that a deer or a squirrel? Well, it's usually a squirrel. Bark scratching, by them going up and down trees, it pretty much makes like a scratching sound. And you can typically hear them. And I've had them right above my head. The nut cutting, as mentioned earlier, nuts dropping from the tree. Limbs shaking when they're bouncing around, especially on a calm day. On a windy day, it's a little harder. But if it's calm, you're going to hear them limbs shaking because they're jumping from tree to tree, especially when they're chasing one another. Distress intrusion calls. They'll usually let you know when you're there. And again, another thing for the deer hunter, nothing worse than when you're all set up and there comes in a squirrel and he's barking and he's chattering because you're in his turf. And then you're like, shut up, squirrel, because deer and turkeys and squirrels and other animals, they know distress calls. And that's kind of a warning. You know, they're looking around for one another. They're looking out for one another. Primary squirrel hunting tactics, obviously standing still. That's how I hunted. Stationary position, try to be as still as possible. The spot and stalk and still hunting are kind of the same things, except for the spot and stalk is often referred to out west for big game, you know, going long distances, down big draws or valleys or from ridge to ridge and spotting with binoculars. Whereas still hunting, you're moving, but it's just moving very slowly, stopping occasionally and look around. Moving very slowly again, stopping, looking around. So you're trying to spot a squirrel on the move while you're moving. I tend to not do that because I move too fast and I make too much noise, but it can be very effective, especially when like there's a drizzle and the leaves are very quiet. Calls with limb shaking. You're going to see some some squirrel calls. Turkey's always on the brain. And limb shaking really kind of mimics like squirrels, say, maybe fighting with one another or even running from a predator. And all those things can cause curiosity. You know, it's just like humans, you know, they see somebody battling or whatever, you know, they want to see what's going on. They're getting their phone out. So it's the same thing with squirrels. The hat stick tactic is very unique in that when you're moving through the woods and you stop, and the squirrel's goal is always going to be to put the tree between you and it. And they're very good at doing that. They're not very good at peeking, that they're good at getting away with it. So if you're standing on one side of a tree, getting ready to shoot a squirrel, it goes on the other side of the tree, just take, and preferably not your orange hat. So that's why I say stick, unless you keep an extra hat because you don't want to take your orange off. Just toss it to the other side of the tree and be ready for when that squirrel comes around your side, because it won't stay there very long once it sees you. Crow and hawk calls, obviously, because that's a prey species. Crows definitely grab baby squirrels and eat eggs, and the hawks go after the adults. So it can draw their curiosity into where is it, you know, and to get ready. Putting harvested squirrels into memory and win the gut. And although I do mention that again in my tactics, what putting harvested squirrels into memory is, many times I've been sitting down and, you know, if I have a really good location, I'm staring there a while, I may shoot 2, 3 or more from one spot. Well, rather than get up after the first squirrel to go retrieve it, you're better off leaving it there. As long as you know it went down and it doesn't require another shot or anything, leave it there. It's not like it's going to spoil. Squirrels don't have a 4-chamber stomach like a deer that starts to, you know, expand, and the deer's not spoiled. It's just they don't have that gas buildup like deer do. And point, if you get up and you move over, any squirrel that's in the area that's seeing what's going on, they may back off and hide for a little while before coming out again. Whereas if you just leave that squirrel to memory, you're not moving. You're not making any unnecessary moves. And it can actually help to harvest more squirrels. Win the gut. If it's a really hot day and I'm picking them up as I'm going and I'm not sitting for a long time, yeah, I'll gut them, but usually not till I get back to the vehicle. Hunting with dogs. I don't hunt squirrels with dogs. A lot of people do in the South. And from what I understand from one of our colleagues, these are some of the types. I mean, you can get a mutt from these different species that help you in the same way that people hunt with deer dogs or rabbit dogs. They help you find the squirrel because they can smell it. And some people love doing that. I never have. So my methods, and of course that bar on the top is hiding it, but this is kind of some of my hunting things. I use the deer approach to sit and wait. I don't hunt from a tree stand though. I sit on the ground and I have some comfortable items I'll be showing in a second, but no tree stand or blind. I want to be mobile for squirrels. Crepuscular is preferred. I like to be there right before dawn and or late in the day if possible, if I have all day to hunt. But the problem is I end up deer scouting. You know, I was so into squirrel hunting years ago and wasn't into deer hunting when I was a young teenager. So I have to force myself now to get back, especially since that thing I call R4 retirement is coming, God willing, and try to spend more time squirrel hunting. Do use binoculars, albeit sparingly. It is the best way, especially if you're hunting with a rifle, to pick out squirrels first with binoculars and not look at sounds, especially on the ground, that could be another person. I say it albeit sparingly because you don't want to also increase your movement. You don't want to be moving all the time, side to side, up and down, because then the squirrel's going to see you. I'll scan the treetops, watch to listen for the leaf shaking and the rustling. So you really make your eyes, ears work and try not to move so much. And when you do move, slowly and deliberately. I have a hard time sitting still. The wet canopy advantage, always good, especially on a calm day, because that will typically give away where a squirrel is. The water may not be falling from the leaves after a rain or falling much, but when that squirrel jumps on that limb, it's like you're going to hear the difference. It's going to be a lot more water falling, so that'll give them away. I may not use calls, but not typically preferred. And as I say here, a disclaimer. When it comes to turkey hunting and duck hunting, calls are primo. When it comes to deer hunting and squirrel hunting, it's about a 50% shot. So does it work? Yeah, but it's more about curiosity than actually drawing that animal to you, just warning it or something like that. So keep that in mind. But I like to play with them every now and then, especially if things are slow. We'll put harvested squirrels into memory, as I mentioned, and pick them up later, and especially even more so on cool days. And of course, when you're getting into October, it's starting to cool off. I'll relocate and scout if no activity. Unlike, say, during the deer rut, I'll sit up in the tree dark to dark, 13 hours in shooting hours. But squirrels, hour or two if I don't see anything. I'm up and moving around and I try to scout the area in advance. We'll gut and may process prior to leaving. So I may have a cooler with some ice in it. I'll have knives, I'll have gloves and everything, and I'll clean them and put them in a Ziploc gallon bag to throw in the freezer. So I'll do it in the field if it's a nice day. But I will not litter. Do not throw skins of squirrels and guts of squirrels right off the road or in a parking lot or on a trail. If you're going to do it, pack the stuff out in a lawn and leaf bag and take it home, or put it in, leave it back in and not on the ground, and no rubber gloves on the ground or bags. You know, it's one thing to leave the entrails and even the bodies back in because something's going to eat it, but not in parking areas or on hiking trails where people are going to see it, because that's littering. Common squirrel calls, already mentioned them, but brought it up again. The bark and the whine, aggressive bark, the chatter, alarm chatter. The fox squirrel versus red squirrel, the big difference is cadence and pitch. Slow it down, deepen it, it's kind of a fox. Red, definitely a high pitch. And a lot of the calls, there are some that are high pitch and some that are not. But obviously each can attract each. It's not conclusive. Distress whistle, young squirrels, and impact on older squirrels. Typically when that young squirrel, I mean, they do have a whistle early on, and it will impact those older adults if they think the young is, being attacked, even though during most of the fall, they're not really having young there early in the fall or at least mid-fall anyway. Cutting sounds can attract them, obviously, and that's something you'll hear. And then the mating is actually a toned down young squirrel distress call, like a whistle. And I'm sure there's tons of YouTubes out there so that you can listen to them. But may or may not work. So some deep squirrel hunting gear, essentials, and a bit more. For me, I don't even use the synthetic so much for squirrels because I'm on the move. So it's like almost things that I would use for turkey hunting. So like a long pair of coveralls, or maybe just a shirt and the pants, maybe a hoodie and an over jacket. Um, Gloves, typically, if it's cold, I'll have these ones with the flaps that you can put hand warmers in, just the military cutoff fingers or a jersey camo glove. Always have a camo hanky. Uh, just my thing. Always have either a sock hat or the ball cap if it's warmer. And I will always have a polypropylene liner with a wool sock and a head net if it's buggy, the mosquitoes, especially early in the season. This one does have an eye opening, but it breaks up the shine on your face. So I like to have that. Also keeps the skiers at bay, as does this bag over the head one. That's a fine netting that you can see through. And I will use, as you'll see coming up, the permethrin on clothing and the sprays if need be. So a hiker on flat land works out great. I typically like ankle support though, because I am in the mountains, and of course, swampy areas, you're going to have a rubber boot if you're hunting the bottomlands, but all good squirrel areas. So yeah, very simple clothing for squirrels. These were things I used back in the day. They were very common. You'll see them with upland hunters now, a pair of pants that have the brush guard in the front for briars, and coats and vest with that blaze orange. That just reminds me of my hunting era. Again, they're still available, mostly upland, but that's what we wore for small game, rabbit, pheasant, squirrel back in the day. And then of course, this was typically a dove vest back in the day, or a squirrel vest that has a pouch on the back. All these have a game pouch on the back where you could throw the game. And that was part of growing up. Every time I see them, it just brings back great memories. So again, some things I'll carry for squirrel, some I don't. But again, I always say the permethrin. I mean, now with chiggers and the whole tick thing with the diseases, put this on your clothes. It's the bomb. It works. Obviously, the stuff that contains meat, DEET, it damages equipment. So if you have camo guns or something, or maybe a varnish that's sensitive, you get the pyrrhocarbon off and it won't damage your gear. Now, DEET is great. It's always going to be number one, but this stuff is also effective too. I will have moleskin sometimes if I'm walking long distances, but that's mostly turkey hunting. I'll always have my licenses, sometimes multi-states, handheld GPS, compass. I just carry that because I used to carry one back in the day, but it's really, yeah, that's my handheld GPS. So I just sometimes have it extra in case a battery would go dead, but they're always fresh. Thermos of coffee I like. You can never carry enough water. I always carry a liter, always tissues, always food, special turkey hunting, well, turkey and deer hunting wristwatch ammo. I like to put 22s in these little old film canisters that nobody probably sees anymore. Yes, a 10 by 50 or 8 by 50 or 8 by 40 pair of binoculars are nice. Always have my hunting journals. And this is a pouch that contains all these squirrels. Squirrel calls. You're going to see them in a close up shortly. Phone cover. Pair of snips if there's a twig or a branch out in front of you need trim, but usually by the end of the season, I don't carry this, nor do I carry the compass. Pair of shears, the cleaning kit, and the bags in the truck, not in the woods. But yeah, these shears, even though you can break the squirrel leg, the little foot off the squirrel leg, they come off easier with the shears. So that works out pretty good. So that minus about a third of it is what a good third of it is what I'll carry squirrel hunting in a backpack. So here's an example of some squirrels. All of these these four have a whistle and a bellows combination to make whines and chatters. And this one's real squeaky, like a red squirrel. So you could sound like multiple squirrels with some of these. You blow into the side of one of these, and it'll make a whistle sound. And you can see the little indent on them. So they're making them combination calls. That's an old one that I've had forever. These are some things I found online for educational purposes, even though I am a retail therapist. There was a plumbing thing that a guy put a squirrel squealer inside of the end, and then it didn't have anything to rub, like the threads here, like you could have like just taken your fingernail, but I added this little broken off plastic spoon and it sounded much better. And I told the guy on eBay, I said, hey, you might want to put like a scraper on there or whatever. It's not complete. And he said, okay, I'll take that under advisement. Then here was one with like a thimble, a dowel a plastic rod with edges on it, and that did come with that little red plastic spoon. Both of these make the sound of cutting. And so, yeah. And yeah, squirrel thinks another squirrel's eating nut. He's going to come over if he don't have any. So you never know. Curiosity. And obviously a crow call and a hawk call, that can be that cautious, look, because both of those are predators, and maybe get one to announce his presence, his or her presence, when you can't see them. And obviously the old 50-cent squirrel call, 2/4. If you put them perpendicular to one another and scrape the edge, that sounds like a squirrel call. Now on a windy day, these ain't going to work, but dead silence, like a cold winter, or even early fall, you never know. When it comes to sitting, I like this, what used to be called the trophy chair. It was made by Summit. Now they have revised it a little bit, and it's called the captain's chair. So they're still making it. It attaches to a tree. It is super comfortable. To me, it's like sitting in a climber tree stand, and I like to be comfortable. Back in the day, I would just sit on a pad against a tree. Your back changes over time, so not as comfortable. Folding turkey chair, that can be comfortable too. Carry it. It's not that heavy. Carry it on your back, or even like a turkey seat. Put that against the tree and a pad on it. That can be comfortable. But again, my back is beyond sitting against trees unless it's in the tree stand. This is a porta roof umbrella that can be used above your head on a drizzly day, and it notches. This is a big notch that goes to the tree, or it can be a little blind in front of you. I like them, especially for tree stand hunting for deer. And then obviously carrying things in, whether a backpack or a fanny pack with a water bottle on. If you're only out for a couple hours, maybe this works. If you're carrying a little bit more, maybe that works. And then a shooting stick is sometimes nice. The reason I like this is I put it low enough to the ground that both my knees and my elbows support that gun. I don't need a shooting stick. Whereas if you're sitting up against a tree, that might help, especially since the squirrel's head's so small. So some squirrel hunting firearms and ammo. These are a couple of my 22s. Top 2 are semis, 2 in the middle are bolt action, and the bottom is definitely a low end. As I will say, it's all about accuracy, and you'll be seeing some ammo. And so fine tuning a 22 to the ammo is super critical. The big advantage between the semis, and I'm not trying to sell somebody any type of an action, versus a bolt action or even a pump action that you don't really see much anymore, but they were very popular during my era, is these force you to have more movement. But the semi, it's just a trigger pull. Hence, yeah, it's not like getting up and walking away, but you're still working the action of that 22. So the idea is, if you're going to use a bolt, and bolts are great, I like them, and they tend to be the most accurate too. But try to make that first shot count, and you won't be moving other than to work the action. So the Rifle Pro is the low report. It's not as loud. It doesn't scare squirrels as much as the loud report of a shotgun. And it's not like they go into hiding for days, but it may take them a little bit longer to reappear. Longer effective range. The Rifle Con is not for moving squirrels, especially, like I said, they're a nervous wreck, and shooting in the canopy risk, which I'm going to mention again. So by and large, the most common round is the 22 long rifle. Of course, it had many versions before it, like the long, the short, and even something that was called the CB cap that wasn't here. Even the shorts and the longs are effective for squirrels, but by and large, for range and trajectory, that's good. Well, then of course it would come out with the 17s. Do you need them? No. May you want one? Yeah. Much smaller bullet, typically half the size of a long rifle, because typically these are 40 to 42 grains, even less, down to 32, depending on the hypervelocity rounds, where these are typically 20, 25, very destructive. So if you're going to use these for squirrels, or even this 22 Magnum, which is definitely a beefed up, you can see how much bigger it is, you're going to blow them apart. So keeping it headshots and not body shots to destroy the meat, even though there's not much meat in the chest area, you want headshots with that. And you really don't need that greater velocity, but it's up to you. Some people may like their 17s. They tend to be accurate and a little bit more expensive than long rifles. So here's an example of just a 22 Magnum side of some regular 22s. And as I say, not really needed for squirrels. It's more of like It used to be referred to in my area as like a fox gun, a lighter turkey gun for fall turkey hunting, but not turkey in states like us that don't have a fall season. In fact, we took away rifles for the fall in our state too. So yeah, like groundhogs, very popular for groundhogs. That was something I hunted big time in PA. These are shot shells, not for squirrels. Number 12 shot, so you don't take these squirrel hunting. You don't see them much anymore, but they were very popular during my early years for pests, like in barns for shooting at rats, because you really didn't destroy anything. The BBs were so small, but they were highly effective on small pests. So the rundown with the target ammo. They tend to be the most accurate. They have a reduced velocity, often subsonic, and these Winchester subsonics that are 42 grain shoot excellent. In that silver bolt action that you saw, it was a 77 Ruger. Like I can typically get 50. I can typically get one holers at 50 yards with that, and these shoot well too, but not all work well in autoloaders. This one, the screen tag, it's a standard velocity. It does work in one of my autoloaders, but that's something to keep in mind. They have a little bit less power, but they tend to be more accurate. The standard velocity is a half B medium. That is what most 22s are in a category of. The velocity is up. Finding the right one, finding which one your gun likes is what it's all about. And then obviously the hyper velocity, the speed is up, more velocity than you probably need, zipping along pretty good, but they tend to not group as well. And the idea is, as it says at the end, accuracy is number one, and it's always to be determined, TBD for every rifle. Some of my guns will shoot those hyper velocity well, most guns bigger groups. And when I'm saying squirrel accuracy to me at 50 yards is a minute of angle at 50 yards, even at 25 yards, because most shots you're going to get are probably 25 yards, maybe 30 yards. So if you can get all 5 shots or 10 shots, however you shoot inside that 1 inch, then that's within the squirrel's head. But if you're shooting 3, 4, 5, 6 inch groups, then you're outside of that range. So the idea, fine tune your 22 ammo to your gun. And it's good to buy maybe a box of each or whatever, or get some friends together and say, hey, let's buy a box of this, a box of that, and try it out in our guns. So some shotguns, 2 on the tops are pumps, the middle one's a pump. That second one from the bottom, those were very popular during my day. Rifle shotgun combinations. That one happens to be a 410 over 22. I have one that's 22 Magnum over 20 gauge, one that's 223 over 12 gauge. Single shots, but they give you like an opportunity to shoot each. The only thing bad is they weren't really designed to mount scopes. So it was mostly open sights, even though you can mount a scope on them. And of course, your turkey gun, the one on the bottom, that can double as a squirrel gun, especially with the tight chokes and a good tight pattern. So the idea is, though, whether it be a shotgun or a rifle, and you're going to see a slide coming up shortly, get out and pattern it. Shotgun Pro is definitely effective on moving squirrels. Less risk or danger shooting in the canopy of the tree. Shotgun Con is it's loud, and it's typically, well, it is restricted to shorter effective range. A 22 bullet, it's relatively easy if your gun's sighted properly and you know the trajectory to go out 50, 75, even 100, even though it's not a 100-yard gun by any means. Whereas a shotgun, 20, 30 yards, and then your pattern really starts opening up. So keep that in mind. So hunting squirrels in a canopy, you've heard me say it, be sure to target what is beyond. You can see this squirrel right here. I mean, all of them with a shotgun, more or less, perfectly fine, just like shooting a dove in the air. This one's a 22 shot. When it comes to this, especially if you're hunting in an area that has development or you don't really know where that bullet's going and you miss that squirrel, that could go 1.5 miles or 2 miles. We already know what we hear with celebratory fire. People are getting bullets in their house and getting killed, and those things should not happen. So, there's another one. It's like, okay, you hit it. It could even still go through the squirrel and have enough power to kind of hit somebody. So that's just something you want to be cautious of. So rifle suited to backstop or ground hunting, especially squirrels on the ground. Shotgun suited to canopy squirrels. You can't nail back a stray shot. So use common sense there. And if he is up in the tree, make sure he's against the limb. before you shoot a wide limb, and try not to skylight. That's all I'm saying. So on most ammo boxes, they've had these recommendations for years. I didn't see them for a while, but they're starting to come out again. And you can see for the different species and what shot size. And this one blows it up. We're down at the bottom here, rabbit, squirrel. You can see listing of all the gauges, the yard distance, what choke, and then out the 4, 5, 6, and 7.5. Granted, with a much bigger gauge, as in these 12 or 16, yeah, 7.5 at close range, okay, but by far, your best shot is always going to be 4, 5s, and 6s of the lead, straight lead, or lead copper. And obviously, you can go a little smaller if you're shooting bismuth, or if you're shooting tungsten. You can still get some bismuth that is the non-toxic that usually patterns better, but it also tends to be more expensive. So what I typically shoot is lead or copper-plated lead for rabbit and squirrel in a shotgun, and try to shoot as much shot as you can in that shell. So that's kind of a helping hand there. So there's an example. We say 410, that's that little one. That's a 20 gauge. These are 12 gauge. You can see they carry more shot than these, and the more shot, the denser pattern. So even though a squirrel can be killed with a 410, and many have, it is a shorter range affair, and that gun should be patterned first, because the last thing we want to do is cripple or injure an animal. And obviously there's just an example of, it was often called game load. And, these are still common in 410, express long range, like a number 4 is big, close range, not many of them, but it's a good killing shot if the gun patterns well. And of course, there was a box of 25 from when I was in my teens, 486 at Miller's Auto Sales. That was classic. That was a classic ammo box there. So most common shotguns, obviously, are the 410, the 20 gauge, 12 gauge, and 20 and 12 probably the most. And the not so common, the 28, the 16, the 10. These really aren't used for squirrels. 28s probably are, 16s. These are both coming out more, especially for turkey loads with like the tungsten loads. But you can't beat a 20 for an overall, and many people still using a lot of 12s. And again, shorter range, depending on what type of shot, 410s will work. So here it is, folks. Now, obviously the squirrel is not going to have an X on it with a dot. So yes, the chest is a good shot. If you're not shooting these legs here, you get in there in a rib, taking out the lungs and heart just like a deer. Headshots is usually what I'll try for when I'm using the 22. And even with the shotgun, the headshot in that frontal area, that squirrel, because you're going to have a pattern. So what you want is enough of killing pellets, like I said, 4, 5, or 6 in that squirrel, so you do anchor it. And I've heard horror stories where even new students said, yeah, I went out, I shot a squirrel, and he ended up going in his hole. That's not what we want to do. Even though something's going to get in there and eat that, we want to make sure that that shotgun's patterning, look at the maximum effective range of that shotgun pattern, just like you would for turkey, and don't take shots outside of it. Don't take risky shots. As I always say, folks, before you pull a trigger or release a bowstring, put yourself in that animal's place. How would you want to be harvested for food? And we'd think twice about it before we would take something risky. So you took a shot at a squirrel. What the heck happened? Well, flinching's common. And if someone develops a flinch, every time you pull that trigger, you're going to jerk and move that gun. You're either going to miss or cripple it. I've seen shooters that, especially with deer rifles, a little bit of recoil, they're good straight out of the gate for about 3 shots, but then they start waning. You don't want, if even shooting a small caliber gun, if you start getting tired, like your eyes get tired or whatever, try to limit your shots. Trigger snapping or yanking on the trigger rather than slowly squeezing it. It should be a surprise when that gun goes off. Otherwise, it can throw your shot off. And the longer the distance, the more so. Vertical stringing is mostly with high power center fires because the heat up of the barrel. Rarely is that the case with 22s, but it can happen with any really if it's too hot out. If you have unusually large or erratic groups and you're not doing any of the above, you want to check your scope mounts or your sights or even the gun itself screwed to the either synthetic or wood stock, because if they're loose, that will cause that. And obviously the trigger finger placement, which many people don't think about, and quite frankly, I didn't growing up. And you're going to see something of that. You're going to see a slide that shows that. But first, hey, why practice off shooting a bench that I won't have with me in the woods? Well, usually there's a raised hand in an audience, but since there's not here and we're not using raised hands, you want to know the accuracy of the gun first. And the best way you can do that is off a bench and a rest like this person is doing, even if it's only sandbags, something that's going to hold that gun very steady. Then you know once that gun is accurate, then it is human error when you don't have that bench. And talking about the correct trigger pull, I mean, look at this. The trigger is supposed to be on the center of that tip of your finger pad. By doing it the other two ways, you can actually pull that shot from left or right. And I didn't see this slide, but a couple of years ago, and I was astounded because I never really thought about that. I often stick my finger in the notch or very close to the notch, but there you go, folks. And again, you squeeze ever so slowly until the gun goes off. It should be a surprise. And you typically take like, maybe one or two deep breaths and then hold it. But if you hold it too long, then you start moving. Not a squirrel hunting gun, folks. Okay, Daisy Red Ryder, not adequate, not lethal, not ethical. There's an example of Master Officer Eric Gleason. And in fact, I'm wondering, Eric, are you here yet? He may still be out in the field. He shot this squirrel and there was a BB in its butt. Now that tells me that somebody was out with a BB gun and shot that squirrel, perhaps a Daisy Red Ryder or something else, not adequate, not lethal, not ethical. And I don't think if you were a squirrel, you would want a BB in your butt. So don't shoot something that's not adequate. If you like air rifles, and they're using them for deer now, they have these high-end ones, and the suggested minimum velocity for squirrels, and you can ask Meat Eater, and he knows a lot of stuff, but he does have a lot of followers, and I do agree with it. Minimum velocity, 800 to 1,000 feet per second, especially since a standard 22 is over 1,200 feet a second, or up to 15 or even up to 16, 17 for the hypervelocity. But see what the Daisy BB gun is? 350, not a squirrel gun. We're not out there to cripple things or to cause them undue suffering. You can hunt with archery equipment. There is regulations on pound pull of archery equipment. You could see it in the Regs Digest, so take a look under manner of take. And you can use a sling bow. Not for me, but it is even for hunting deer, wild turkey, non-game and non-game fish. And that is on page 54 where it says that. Yeah, opportunity to, I mean, it looks like a slingshot with an arrow. So that's basically what it is, but just wanted to let you know. For small game with arrows, whether it be a bow or that sling bow, so you don't lose your arrows, they typically have these spring-loaded attachments and or blunt force trauma tips that don't go far. It'll like bounce off a squirrel, sometimes stick in it, but highly effective, and they will kill it. I mean, it's just a very hard punching force. So whether it's to the body, typically, again, preferred in the chest or in the head, it'll kill the squirrel right out. So they look like they're from ancient times, but they work, and you don't lose your arrows unless you stick it in a tree. Again, as mentioned, wear hunter orange, visible from all sides when hunting bear, boar, rabbit, grouse, squirrel, pheasant, or quail, and anyone hunting deer during a deer firearm season, regardless of what implement you're using, must wear orange. So keep that in mind. Squirrel processing, a brief journey. Wow, and I'm pretty much closely to the end here. A couple of shares yet, and then we'll take any questions. So I saw this slide. I thought it was great, and it worked. So processing 101, knife, game shears, and you don't even need the game shears if you can just snap the legs off like I used to. Glove, salt water for soaking, optional. There's a picture of a squirrel with a knife. He's already dead. He's not gutted in that situation. He doesn't have to be gutted to do it that way. The way I did it, I started from the center, worked around, started pulling the skin from the center. And again, this can be a non-gutted squirrel. Some will cut at the tail, pull it off, attach the legs to the tree. I've seen all kinds of gadgets even that work, but this is a simple way that I've done it when growing up. So you start the skin there. Then you pull the skin to both sides. You pull it like you're taking a shirt off of the squirrel body. You can see how muscular they are. You can snap the legs off or cut the shears off. You got the squirrel there. It's gutted, obviously, opened up inside. And right there, I mean, that can go in a crock pot or it can go in an instant pot. I like instant pots. I found them. They're pretty neat, quicker. And or it can be cut up into pieces, also put in the pot, or fried. People like fried squirrel. And so there you have it. And granted, the chest cavity for the most part, unless it's breaking down in the crock pot, isn't much. So it's mostly the back legs, the front legs, the back itself, and there's the chest cavity on the side. So, I mean, that could be cooked up as well. I saw this probably 2 years ago. This woman had this recipe. There's tons of them. You're going to see that in a second. And I usually give this as a PDF, but it's not so much the recipe, it's her marinade for squirrels. And just to run through, salt water helps the flavor while also denature, breaking down the proteins. I don't worry about tenderization or a brine for squirrel, but some people prefer it. Then you soak it in vinegar water. Acid helps to weaken the collagen, weaken the proteins, also makes it tender. And then it just goes on and on how to use the rest of it. And that again will be provided at the when I get the recordings in a PDF form. So all kind of stuff out there. And for the heck of it, 2 years ago or more, or maybe that was from even 2018. Yeah, it was 2018. 7,420,000 recipes. So that's why we really don't push recipes so much when there's so many out there. All I will say is test it out for your own. Most of my recipes are very simplistic, but there are so many. And whether or not you decide to brine it or marinate, it's up to you. I know soaking was common growing up. We would put salt water, soak it, and that would kind of also pull some of the blood out of the meat. One of the best websites for the squirrel hunter, a guy by the name of Nate. I'm sure he still has it. I did check it last year, and I think probably over the summer. Information on hunts, videos, guns, gear, overwhelming. So this person is really into it, really into guns, and likes to hunt squirrels. Reminders, please do complete that post-webinar assessment. And again, you will get that when I get the recordings. I'm hoping to get them as soon as possible. I do have 3 more webinars coming up, including, 4. 2 waterfowl, an upland game, and a bear, and that is on Go Outdoors. So we hope to see you again. Yeah, your feedback is important, as is constructive criticism. As I always say, folks, and not a lot less slides than last year, paying it forward is what we need, because it is true that there are currently far more wanting than willing. And so I'm hoping that my colleagues and my successor can even do better, whether it be in the programming or in gaining more support, because we are needing it, especially as, like myself and other baby boomer generations, or as I like to say, the greatest number of modern day contemporary hunters of all times is aging out. So now we're going to have some Q&A. There is some. And Eric, are you up yet? You may be still out in the field. So it's Deet James. Can you legally take squirrels that at your deer feeder on private land? Yeah, that wouldn't be really considered baiting. I mean, I don't know the law directly, but I don't think it's a problem. But I would say you better not be in city limits. So, and yeah, other than that, you're likely all right. If you don't feel comfortable, since I never shot squirrels at a deer feeder, I don't think there's any laws against taking squirrels over bait, because they could be eating corn in the woods. So you're probably okay. Just you want to be safe, especially if there are other houses. So I think you're good there. If there are no other questions, and maybe we hit it really hard, we as in me, hit it really hard, then I will just say, okay, we do. Could you clarify your comment regarding 22 ammo and waterfowl impoundments, i.e. lead, okay or no? 22 ammo, yes, because that would be under the same category that the buckshot in a shotgun shell would be, because they're essentially the same size. If you're using a shotgun, though, it has to be non-toxic. Have you ever heard of someone with a slingshot? Yeah, hunting. Well, you didn't really say hunting, but no. Yes, slingshots could kill a squirrel, but hitting it's another story. So maybe Opie on what's that show? Andy Griffith probably could do it, but I couldn't. Okay, and while we're waiting for another one, I just will say, for those that probably are getting ready to leave because we're already past time, do attend more programming. I hope to see you virtually or in person before I do leave. I'll be here the rest of the year. We do have more programming lined up. Please be safe out there. Please be ethical out there. Please don't leave garbage. The other day I was out hunting on the first day of dove season. I ran into these two nice individuals that lived in the area. And what upset me most is that it wasn't high weeds where we were hunting, and there must have been 8 or 10 shotgun shells on the ground. I know part of the baby boomer generation didn't really think much about that. You left your holes on the ground, but folks, that's litter. So pick up whatever you leave, and that includes bottles, cans, whatever. And obviously, hunters aren't the only ones that do it. Anglers, hikers, bikers, people driving down the road. I think it's such a shame. But enough of that. Be safe out there. Be ethical. Hope to see you in the woods sometime. And please consider being a volunteer for our program, whether it be for the Learn to Hunt program, whether it be for 8-hour workshops, the minis, webinars. And it doesn't mean you need to be an instructor. You can be a logistics assistant instructor, because we need you. So with that and no other question, I bid you all a great night. I hope to see you again soon. Have a good night, and I'm signing off.